Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with recovering lawyer, author, athlete, CEO, coach, and founder of PurePower Botanicals, Donald McLaughlin. Before he found PurePower, he served as a government prosecutor, trial lawyer, and tech entrepreneur in the Fortune 500 for nearly 20 years. While he enjoyed great success in his career, he also experienced intense struggles with anxiety and depression while working under extreme pressure and stress. In late 2012, he hit rock bottom following years of chronic stress and burnout tied to him founding and managing a rapid growth legal tech startup. From there, he resolved to reinvent himself and become a better partner, father, leader, CEO, and human being, and he's there. Enjoy this interview.
Thanks for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure.
You seem like you're kind of a renaissance man.
Well, it's been quite a journey, and I definitely follow inspiration where it leads, and that's led down some interesting paths.
That's the way to live right there. So I want to begin before we get into your life, your very varied life and all the paths. I want to know, how did you do during COVID, that 2-year period? How did you survive it, and how did it subsequently change you, not only as a professional, but as a human being?
It's a great question. I think for me, I feel so blessed in many, many ways during the time of the pandemic, principally because, I live in a beautiful part of the world. I like to consider God's country in Northwest Colorado, and had access to, nature, which has proven to be such a vital place of rejuvenation for me. And I was close to my kids, we fared pretty well. We got COVID before the vaccines came out, and we all made it through. Grateful for that. I think having a family close and access to the outdoors was truly a blessing, because I felt like it helped me, cope and them to an extent as well. So all in all, very, very grateful given how hard it was for others in much more challenging ways.
So let's give everybody out there a really good grasp of what you do for a living on a daily basis. And I'm going to take you in front of a bunch of third graders at a career day. And a third grader looks up at you and says, "What do you do for a living?" How are you going to answer them?
I'm going to answer them by saying that what I do day to day is to help people feel better on a day-to-day basis. That's really our mission at PurePower Botanicals. And then personally in my work with business owners and entrepreneurs is help them feel more confident in their business and where they're going in their business, so that they can serve more people with whatever product or service they deliver.
And ultimately, your path to a healthier living and helping people espouse that same idea of having a healthy living actually came because of burnout, came because of a lot of things. Talk to me a little bit about the moment you realized you were living a life that you didn't want to and things had to change.
Very hard moment. In the early morning hours of November 3rd, 2012, I woke up on the floor of a hotel bathroom at the luxurious Broadmoor Resort in Colorado Springs. And the night before, I just had gone overboard, to say the least. And when I woke up at roughly around 5 a.m. that morning, I realized something was seriously wrong. Here I was, 42 years old, the founder and CEO of a multi-million-dollar legal and tech services company, serving some of the biggest companies in the country, and yet, I clearly was out of sorts and disconnected in so many ways from the life that I really wanted to lead. And so in that moment, Joe, I knew, it was either, brush it off as just, a bender on the night of my youngest brother's rehearsal dinner for his wedding and just, chalk it up to, well, it was, a festive environment and I drank too much. But it was more than that. And there was the opportunity for me to change. And I knew I had to, because in that moment, so much of what I'd been building for years and years was at risk. A family with 3 beautiful children, this multi-million-dollar business, clients who relied on us. And if I didn't sort myself out, that was all at risk. And so, as I described it, it was a combination of both grit and grace, and perhaps more grace than grit. That things did turn around. I found in those moments a renewed passion for life generally. I felt immense gratitude for whatever force had kept my heart beating the night before while I laid in a crumpled mess on that bathroom floor, and immediately set to right the ship, so to speak, and that was me. And that started with, just my mindset, but then also my lifestyle and choices around how I was managing myself. And that encompassed everything, Joe, from, exercise, what I was putting into my body, my misuse and abuse of alcohol, antidepressants that I'd been on for several years to deal with pretty severe anxiety and clinical depression. And I just needed to turn a leaf in a big way. And I'm grateful that, again, through that combination of grace and grit, that over several months and then now years, my life really did take some radical shifts. And I'm so grateful for that hard moment. I think it's so cliche. It can seem cliche to say that our hardest moments can be our best, and in my case, that was absolutely the case.
Yeah, I keep thinking about the fact that you're up there in Colorado. That's one of my favorite places, and that would be a wonderful place to be during a pandemic time. In fact, I went up there. I went up for a wedding that looked like it came out of a Hallmark movie in Pine, Colorado this summer, and drove from there to San Diego, and that was wondrous.
I love it. Yeah, it's a place that, growing up in northern New Jersey in the 70s and 80s, listening to John Denver in my parents' living room, I thought, at 12 years old, I'm going to go to the place that he's singing about. And I did. At age 16, I flew out from New Jersey to volunteer to join a U.S. Forest Service and Colorado Mountain Club volunteer group building the Colorado Trail in 1986. So it was the seed was planted early for me, and I moved permanently to Colorado in the fall of 1996. So it's been a beautiful place to build a career and most importantly raise my kids in a small mountain town and have them grow up on horseback and participate in county fair and raise animals and all of that. So I'm blessed beyond measure, Joe, in so many ways.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, Colorado always captures me. And coming from Kansas City, it's like you have to go through the pain of Kansas to get there. But once, but once you do, it's like it's glorious. In fact, I got remarried in 2019, and we were going to go to New Orleans, and it was July 13th. Which we later found out was the day of Live Aid, the day Queen performed in Wembley Stadium.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so we were going to go to New Orleans, and a hurricane was brewing, so we were like, we'll reroute. We'll go to Colorado, and we ended up going to Manitou Springs, got a bed and breakfast, and it was glorious there, man. It was so much fun.
Yes, Manitou is beautiful. And I'll say this, Joe, I think for so much of my professional career, I had sort of the get there-itis in the sense of if I just get to this place, if I just have this experience, if I just achieve this milestone, then life will be amazing. And what I've learned through the course of all the ups and downs is that to just appreciate the moment that I'm in, and that there's no sort of rainbow over the horizon, right? That the moment we're in right now is it, and that's certainly been reinforced for me, in my turnaround from November 3rd, 2012. One of the things that I found, or it found me, was long distance ultra trail running in the mountains, and the reason it comes to mind is because there's so much of that in the sense of being in the moment in those ultra endurance events, because thinking about, oh, I wished I was ahead here at this checkpoint, or I just can't wait for the finish. It's just maddening, and better to just be in the moment and run the mile you're in, so to speak. So that's one thing I've really come to appreciate as I've aged.
Yeah, for sure. I understand that notion. So talk to me a little bit about your childhood. First of all, what did you want to be when you grew up? And second of all, you obviously are a very highly motivated individual. You've done a lot with your life. How did these seeds of motivation get in you to sprout into who you are now?
I appreciate that question, Joe. Grew up in one of seven in an traditional Irish Catholic family in northern New Jersey, and really second generation to go to college, and all my siblings did as well, many of them on collegiate athletic scholarships. So a pretty competitive environment growing up. And I think from an early age, at least for me personally, I wasn't as gifted as some of my siblings athletically, and also I struggled academically. So it was a little bit of a rough go early for me. That's how it was for me. But there came a time when through just grinding and persistence, I learned ways to study more effectively, and then I started to do better, particularly through high school, and then I sort of saw that academic success could be a way that I could really shine, and I took that very seriously. I attended the University of Vermont in part because I love the state of Vermont. I love the mountains, and I think I mentioned my just appreciation and call toward wilderness and nature. But what I actually did, Joe, is I went to University of Vermont, and I became sort of a study addict, and I just was so fueled by achieving academically, and it worked. I really graduated near the top of the class, and yet that sort of set up additional achievement, if you will, which I'm so grateful for, all the opportunities, right? Going to law school. But I will say, in answer to your question, what did I want to be when I grew up? There are a whole host of things. I'm definitely a person of, a wide variety of interests. So everything from, at a time in high school and college, fascinated by open wheel racing and Formula One and Indy, and thought about going that direction, but then also had interest in, flying for the Navy. So it was very, very varied. And then also out of sort of where I don't know, a real interest in holistic health. And that actually was my first job, even though I graduated near the top of my class at the University of Vermont. My first job was actually as an intern at Omega Institute, which is one of the preeminent holistic retreat centers in Rhinebeck, New York, in the beautiful Hudson Valley. And I served as an intern there during the summer right after I graduated from the University of Vermont. So that, again, demonstrates the variety of interests that I had. But holistic health, this was in 1992, the topics of yoga and meditation, they were not obviously well known or appreciated. And I thought, oh my God, I could never, make a career out of that world. And so I reverted to, in a way, what I knew, which is my mother, her three brothers, and her father were all lawyers, pretty prominent lawyers in northern New Jersey. My grandfather was a judge in New Jersey for years. And so I went down the path of law school, and it fit me very well. And yet it reinforced some of the patterns that I mentioned earlier about just pursuing academic success, and with it, professional success as well. And that then sort of set me up for a fall, if you will. The one I described earlier, I think was tied to that in a way. And I'm working on my next book, which is very much around what I characterize as sort of my addiction to achievement and the dark paths that led me down, while at the same time, amazing opportunities and certainly financial success and prestige, but it had certainly dark sides to it. And coming to terms with that, and sort of back to my analogy of righting the ship, that's been an ongoing effort for me to just reconnect with what's true and real and authentic for me. And in the process, reclaiming my health is one way that I've really done that, Joe.
In our lives, sometimes we're only as good as those that we look up to. Who's consistently been a hero or a role model for you in your life? That's
a great question. I will say that there are certainly spiritual leaders that have been inspirations for me because I've certainly been called and inspired in that direction. So whether it's the Dalai Lama, writers and speakers like Marianne Williamson, these have been role models of mine. In the world of business, that's always been of interest to me. Jake Burton was a real inspiration for me through college years. I was fortunate enough to meet him when I served as secretary of the fledgling new snowboarding club at the University of Vermont. We actually put on the first NCAA snowboarding championships in the spring of 1991, and I got to meet Jake and just so impressed by him sort of, co-creating with a few others this industry that we now know of, the snowboarding industry. But then also Richard Branson and how bold he was as an entrepreneur. So those are some of the heroes that come right to mind for me, Joe.
So you may have already answered this, but I'm going to ask it. If you could meet anybody on the planet alive right now and talk to them, who would that be?
That's a great question. Richard Branson is a person I would definitely like to meet, given his varied experiences through life. I've got to say the Dalai Lama and Thich Nhat Hanh also is a spiritual leader. Both are obviously aged. And just the wisdom from those individuals, I would like to, be in the presence of, and yet also appreciate the levity that they all seem to live with through life. The way of being serious, but not taking themselves seriously, if that makes sense, Joe.
Certainly does. When we wake up, when we get ready to start our day, we have things we look forward to, things we want to do, people we want to see. What motivates you? What fuels you through your typical day?
Great question. Historically, it really was, the drive to accomplish and achieve certain things. And while that drive remains, there's a slight shift and it's actually a significant one. My whole experience of and definition of success has changed so much from one that's been historically for me driven by, external rewards and acknowledgments to one that's much more about what do I feel most called to do to contribute and in that way feel engaged in the world. And that took me hitting that rock bottom moment to realize that the business was not about me, right? That it was about the business of serving, right? The work that we were doing, and one could say, well, servicing big Fortune 500 companies, is that really an admirable service? And absolutely was, because what I realized was, again, it wasn't about the numbers, it wasn't about the growth, it was about the human beings that we were helping within those companies. And so, that's what drives me today is where and how can I show up with just my unique set of skills and experience to contribute to those things that I feel called to. And if I'm doing that every single day, then every single day it's a success, regardless of the ups and the downs, because I've just learned that that's not a great measure of success.
So, throughout our lives, we obviously gain wisdom, as you mentioned, in the race. It's not about winning it. It's about being in the moment and living the journey. And let's say you have a dream tonight and you run into your 20-year-old self, and you could give that young version a piece of advice based on the wisdom and the roads that you've been down in life. What would you tell your young version?
What I would tell my young version is to give more credit to your intuition and be brave, be courageous in following those inspired calls, if you will. Yes, I would say that. And then I guess the other part of this is just to have more fun, right? To just enjoy life day in and day out, and just soak it all in.
And this is going to sound cliche, but it's true. We don't live for the awards and accolades, but it's always good when we get that positive feedback. What's been one of the best fan letters, best responses from a client that you've ever gotten?
Great question. It really is, for me, immediate. With our work at PurePower, while we have an athletic, active lifestyle focus of our products and sort of our ethos at PurePower, it's an email we received from a customer who is just struggling with some very serious health issues, and in particular gut-related health issues, and how much the products have helped her live a life free of so much of the discomfort and disruption that she's lived with, even while taking lots of prescription drugs. So that to me has just been like, it's just so gratifying on so many different levels to hear that something that was just this sort of harebrained idea to combine these different herbs and adaptogenic mushrooms with hemp extract, to have a person who's not a elite level athlete just say how much the products have improved her quality of life.
So everyone out there has a perception of you, your family, your friends, business associates, and all of these varying capacities. But ultimately, you've always been the one living your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
That's a great question. I think, in fact, I know at deep down that I am a seeker. I'm an explorer, and I'm a giver. And I can forget that or just push that to the wayside at times in pursuit of as I've mentioned, the external achievements. But when I remember that, I'm most connected both with myself and with others in ways that results in the richest moments in my life. I think back when I've been most open and most authentic to who I am in those qualities, that life is most rewarding when I remember that.
So, Don, let's get to the good business here. If anybody wants to pick up your products, your book, learn more about you, anything related to your world, where's the best place for them to go?
Great, Joe. So a book I co-authored entitled Plants, Performance, and the Endocannabinoid System, which we haven't had really enough time to talk through. That can be found on Amazon. It's really it's the result of my curiosity around what was happening as I incorporated these various herbs like ashwagandha and turmeric and combined it with hemp, and these massive gains that I saw in my life, both professionally and as an athlete. So Plants, Performance, and the Endocannabinoid System, that's a low cost on Amazon. I'm proud to say we hit #1 status in a couple of different categories. For PurePower generally, livepurepower.com is our website. Again, that's livepurepower.com, where we have 120 different blogs and resources to look through in addition to our products and some of the reviews that I'm proud to say we've received from everyday folks to pro athletes, world champion athletes. And then on social, Pure Power Life is where folks can connect with us on Instagram and Facebook. Again, that's Pure Power Life. And then for me personally, Don McLaughlin Jr. on Facebook and Instagram is the best place to connect.
Wonderful. And I didn't mean to not elaborate more on the book. If you wanted to add anything, please do. I just want to make sure I covered all the bases.
No, Joe, absolutely. I'll just say this. I think that, when I discovered hemp extract by reading an article in the Denver Post in early 2013, I almost fell off my chair because it talked about this plant that was non-psychoactive and legal, and it was related to cannabis. And it had all these reported therapeutic and medicinal properties. The reason I almost fell on my chair is because I started my legal career as an assistant DA prosecuting cannabis crimes, but no one ever told me about this thing called hemp. So it led me on this journey, and it led me to discover this endocannabinoid system that has only been discovered in the late 80s, early 90s. And I just had to find out more, right? Where was the research? Because I started to experience some real benefits. And that led me down a path to interview, former NFL players and other pro athletes. And that's encapsulated in the book, Plants, Performance, and the Endocannabinoid System. When I started on that journey, and even honestly, when we really were working hard to build Pure Power in 2017, if you'd asked somebody on the street what's CBD, they would have looked at you like, what do you mean? Is that a subway stop? Or, they had no idea. Nowadays, you ask people and they kind of roll their eyes and say, oh, the next snake oil. And that's a shame because I think there's been a lot of misinformation. And so that book, Plants, Performance, and the Endocannabinoid System, is really, science-based, coupled with these interviews from real world athletes who've benefited from the nutrients in the hemp oil. So I appreciate that additional moment, Joe, because I do think there's just too much misinformation. The federal government and the FDA has its own, angle on hemp oil. And I think more need to know what the real science is because it really can have so many positive impacts on our health and our performance.
Hemp is kind of the target of what I call plant racism. I was just thinking, it's like it's misguided. It doesn't make any sense. And it targets something that's genuinely good, and I agree. That's been cultivated for eons, right, around the world, and was heavily in the U.S., right? So many of us don't know that have grown up since the 50s and 60s, right? Hemp was advocated by the federal government for farmers to grow around the World War II effort. So, yes, I think it should give us all pause to question why has hemp been so vilified? And until 2018, when the Farm Bill was signed, it was considered a Schedule I substance on the order of opiates. It just doesn't make sense. So yes, that's in part the reason that we worked on that book and published it, and I hope that it benefits your listeners. Absolutely. This has been fascinating. Don, thank you for opening up, and good luck with everything as we move forward. I appreciate it.
Joe, thank you so much. Love your show and what you're doing, and appreciate this opportunity and look forward to another.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, business, spirituality, music, and literature from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.